What's up, everyone? Aaron Nagler here with the one and only Andy Herman. That's right, the Don of the Pack a Day podcast and purveyor of fine Packers takes everywhere on the internet. Andy, happy championship week! Here we are.
How the hell are you doing? How can you not be excited for this? It doesn't get any better than this. I know the Brady Rodgers thing will be drilled into. It's already drilled into the ground, probably. But I mean, how can you not celebrate this amazing week and everything that it stands for?
Hey, I've been saying for pretty much since the start of the playoffs that I want Brady at Lambeau. I get my wish. So, I know people will say be careful what you wish for, and I do think Brady did make this defense look somewhat ridiculous last time around. But we'll get there. We'll get to the Bucs. You and I have not chatted about this divisional playoff victory for the Green Bay Packers over the Los Angeles Rams. It's funny because all of the Packers games these days, this kind of last month or so, the stretch run, if you will, seem to follow the same script. And it always seems to be, yep, they're going to probably allow the opponent to drive a little bit, but they're going to score a number of times, get a lead, and then, again, not coast, but pretty much have the game in hand. And it is interesting that that's kind of been their formula. The offense will score points. The defense will get opportunistic stops, and that's the ball game.
I said the exact same thing to Perry and Alex on today's Pack a Day podcast. It's literally formulaic at this point. The offense is going to be epic, put up 30 points. The defense will frustrate you at times, but you look back at the box score at the end of the day, and it's going to be better than you thought it was. And then the special teams is going to have their 4 or 5 mind-numbingly painful moments in each game that they figure out new and painstaking ways to rip your heart out at times. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's a success and it's another win. But it is really crazy how this same formula has worked for basically almost 2 seasons now, but specifically this season.
It's interesting looking at the offensive side of the ball in this game against the Rams. All week long, I was asked if A.J. Dillon was going to be a component, something that they would work into the game plan. And I didn't think that was going to be the case, and I was dead wrong in the sense that they really tried to utilize that 3-headed monster. Obviously, Dillon got injured on that play where he fumbled it. Outside of that, though, I thought that had the makings of some really interesting stuff for LaFleur as far as how he can deploy those guys and try to keep defenses guessing as to how they're going to be utilized.
I love this from LaFleur because if you go back to how the Rams want to play defense, they love playing their 2 safeties back. They don't like committing them into the run game. They want to keep those guys back and make their defenders up front kind of do the heavy lifting, which has worked for them all season long. They're the number 1 defense for a reason, but you've got a wide receiver to the right. You've got 2 wide receivers or a wide receiver and a tight end to the left. And, you've got corners matched up on those guys. And then Aaron Jones goes in motion. Somebody goes with him. Your 2 safeties are still back. You've got a 5-on-5 up front, offensive line versus, the defensive front for the Rams. And it's A.J. Dillon running behind a 5-on-5 front. Like, what better look than that do you possibly want? And they kept running it. Rams didn't change anything. If they would have, then they probably would have thrown it to Aaron Jones, or if they would have put a safety up and Devontae's the one on the outside and he's one-on-one, then you take your shot to him. Like, pick your poison against that grouping. I'm not exactly sure the best way to stop it, but to know that the Rams were going to come in with their 2 high safeties and not change that too much, and to get 5-on-5 looks up front with A.J. Dillon, I loved what he did in that situation.
Speaking of 5-on-5, I do think one of the more underappreciated aspects of that game, possibly, as far as oxygen goes on the internet, because you are talking Devontae, you're talking Rodgers, you're talking the backs, etc., was the work of that offensive line, particularly the interior. I know Aaron Donald wasn't 100%, but he is not the only component to that front. There are a lot of talented guys that the Packers, I'm not going to say handled necessarily, but they definitely created for those backs in a way that I'm not going to say I was shocked, but I was surprised how effective it was because, as you said, they have been the number 1 defense. They have controlled the front for the most part of every team that they played. We saw that just a week ago against the Seahawks. I was really impressed with the work that Patrick, Lindsley, and Jenkins did up front.
Yeah, I thought the interior of the offensive line was really the strength in this game and being able to get that movement. And I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but give Matt LaFleur credit again. If they lose this game to the Rams, divisional round at home, and you have as many runs as you have passes, everyone's going to second guess him for a decade of why do you not let Aaron Rodgers try to win you a game in a playoff game to go to the NFC Championship? But, he stuck with the run. And really, you go back to the Carolina Panthers game, right? The Panthers dared them to run the football. In the first half, they obliged, ran it all over, scored 21 points, and were looking great. They asked him to do the same thing in the second half. And as you kind of noted right away after that game, Green Bay wanted to go for the kill shot. They got a little bit too aggressive. It was a little all gas, no break, but in the wrong sense because they didn't take what was given to them. This was the exact opposite. The Rams kept playing their two deep safeties. They kept giving them these looks, and Matt LaFleur stuck with it. And to be fair, it's a hell of a lot easier to stick with it when you're getting 60-yard gains and working. But still, kudos to them for sticking with it and having this game plan. And I don't think it was a mistake that Matt LaFleur, in his very first sentence off of it in his press conference, talked about them wanting to set the tone and be physical up front, and that's what he was most proud of. That was obviously a key for them going in, is they wanted to out physical the Rams on the interior. And what better way to transition into this Tampa Bay game where the Packers couldn't run the ball at all. They spent way too much time on the edges trying to attack Levante David and White on the outsides, which was a nightmare. If they can get that run game going on the interior, similar to what they did against the Rams, that is a huge opportunity for success.
Hey, and shout out to Aaron Rodgers, because he is a large component in seeing that two safety look and checking to the run or sticking with the run call. We've heard Aaron, talk about, second and long, sticking with it, if it's advantageous look, et cetera. We've heard LaFleur talk about that. So Rodgers is a component here. When you talk about sticking with the run, he is certainly, either, whatever, however you want to frame it, guilty or prone to maybe trying to, like you say, go for the kill shot, et cetera. Looking at Davante Adams and Jalen Ramsey, which was the headline heading into this game all week long, you heard Davante himself say they probably played 3 to 5 snaps of pure man the entire game. But it is interesting going back and watching how little Jalen seemed to want of Davante. Like, Davante pretty much had his way off the line of scrimmage. Now, again, it wasn't always pure man. A lot of it was zone, a lot of it match concepts, etc. But man, there didn't seem to be a whole lot of checking going on from Jalen Ramsey against Davante Adams.
No, and as Davante mentioned last week, it just so happens that one of Davante's strengths is not allowing corners to get their hands on him. And we always like to see, this 99 rated player in Madden and just think that he doesn't have any weaknesses, right? Like, Jalen Ramsey is a hell of a corner and is deserving of every amount of praise that he gets, but he is very strong in certain situations. A DK Metcalf is a fantastic matchup for him. He can be physical at the line of scrimmage, get his hands on him, run with him, do all those sorts of things, but not every corner is a perfect match up for every wide receiver. And no disrespect to Jalen Ramsey, but Davante Adams, if you're going to try to get up on him and press him, which is, again, not what they tried to do, which is understandably so, but you don't want that from Davante. You don't want that from any corner. And maybe a Jair Alexander, somebody who's a little bit more twitchy, could, maybe stick with some of that, but that's not totally Jalen Ramsey's game. And give him credit for how he did cover Davante for a portion of that game. But in some of those man-on-man situations where he was able to get ISO'd and run some of those slants, you pointed out perfectly. There's the one game where he beat him on the slant and Ramsey kind of backed up and is like, no, that wasn't my guy.
That literally looked like Ha-Ha Clinton Dix on that play.
A little bit.
Exactly what he looked like. Like, oh, it's a reception. Oh, that's not my guy. And he just kind of backs away. I don't know. But you're right. He deserves all the credit in the world for being as good as he is, and he certainly has been all year. Let's look at the defensive side of the ball, because I asked Coach after the game, that drive at the end of the first half drives you absolutely nuts. And I understand the idea of not wanting to give them a cheap one over the top, trying to make them earn it, etc. But at some point, don't you have to offer up some resistance? I mean, as you said before, you go back and you look at it in the post game, you look at the kind of the press box, so to speak, of, okay, this is what the idea was behind it. It makes sense. But man, in the moment, it is beyond frustrating to see them give up these somewhat easy completions, especially in these soft zones that offer very little resistance.
We've talked a bit or maybe even a lot about this before, but I've now coined the phrase for the Packers defense: they're frustratingly good. And you go back and you look at everything at the end, and it ends up actually being better than anyone expects. But in the moment, those 3 drives, right? They had 8 possessions. They scored on 3 drives, 18 total points, which you will take almost in every single game, especially with the Packers offense. But those 3 drives are painstakingly brutal, because I swear to God, every single play is 6 yards, and you're in the moment and you're watching that, there's no stops, there's no nothing. It seems like no resistance whatsoever, and it is really tough to look at it and be like, how can you call this a good defense when they're allowing 6 yards, 7 yards, 5 yards, and you see them go down and drive and score points?
And seemingly little to no adjusting within the drive itself. It seems that there is a drive or two a game where Pettine is just like, okay, just don't throw it deep.
Yep.
Do whatever else you want, just don't throw it deep. And that's what drives you nuts.
It does, and it's frustrating in the situation. And then you go back and you look at it and you see the 3 drives that were painful, but the other 5 drives, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 7 plays punt, 7 plays turnover on downs, 23 plays, 27 or 28 yards. I forget what it was. They literally averaged basically a yard per play on the other 5 drives. And it's like, all right, when you see if you take the long view of it and look at everything, you're like, okay, I can understand what they're doing. But in the moment, I get what everyone says, and I'm right there with you. It feels awful.
Well, and that's what makes it even more frustrating is that you look at those 5 drives, and so that shows they can do it. You know they're capable. So why suddenly sometimes do they call off the dogs, so to speak? And it's not even a question of, oh, they need to blitz more, because of course that's not it. But you know they have the capability of being a lot more kind of dictating to the opposing offense. Let's spin this forward. Let's look at this matchup with the Buccaneers, because obviously all week we're going to hear about week 6 and everything that went wrong. And to me, obviously a lot will be made of the pick 6 that kind of started to turn things around in that game. But ultimately, I think that game came down to David Bakhtiari going out. And when they had to slide Rick Wagner over to left tackle in the middle of the game, you saw everything fall apart up front. They could not block anything as far as the pressure goes. It'll be a very different story this time around for a lot of different reasons, but for most of it, the biggest reason is the makeup of the offensive line being set coming into this game, having Billy Turner at left tackle. Rick's going to be at right tackle. And then, as we mentioned, those interior guys, I think they're much better situated this time around as far as, look, they know they're at home. They can control the tempo. They can control things in a way that they probably didn't do a very good job of down in Tampa.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, whether there's all of that. And then I think, Green Bay just knows the length of that turf and the speed of that turf. And, it might be a little bit faster in Tampa Bay. Those defenders play so ridiculously quick. And we saw what they're capable of doing on, the turf down in New Orleans this past week. But things are a little bit different, maybe a little bit slower in Green Bay. I think that's going to help out the offensive line. I wouldn't be shocked if maybe that grass was just a tad bit thicker going into this week.
There's a good chance of snow on the ground, too, from early weather reports. So
possibly. No, I agree with you. I think this is a much different ballgame. And as you've mentioned as well, the week 6 matchup has no, predictive abilities on what's going to happen this upcoming weekend. It's going to be a hell of a game. I think it's a coin flip. I think both of these teams are really damn good, but I like Green Bay's chances with the situation that they're given.
To me, we got to find a moment. The Packers have to get a sluggo at one point in this game, some kind of pump and go, something to take advantage of these corners. Because one of the reasons they got a pick 6 last time around is because they're squatting on everything. It's a third down. They know they're sending a blitz, so they try to undercut the route. Let's get them early on in the snap count. Let's get a 1st and 10. Let's get something where early in this game, to me, is a big kind of indicator of how aggressive they want to be. But get these guys thinking a little bit. As you said, the turf's not as quick. Get them trying to bite up and then take advantage of them long. We saw LaFleur and company kind of take advantage of that against the Rams late in the game, where they obviously are trying to run out the clock in a 4-minute situation and then take that shot to Lazard to basically stick the dagger in the Rams. To me, this is a game where you want to do that early in the game. Get them thinking, get them biting, and then second-guessing themselves.
I like that a lot. And I think, against Seattle last year, we saw some of those plays where Matt LaFleur had up his sleeve. Again, the kind of, the play to Devontae Adams that goes for a touchdown. I think he's probably still got some of that. I don't think he had to pull too much of that out against the Rams. And I think he's probably got a few things up his sleeve, and I think we'll see a little bit of that early against Tampa Bay. And I think if you want to look at something else that's predictive, is just, again, how Green Bay's running inside. If Tampa Bay is having the success shutting down the run game again early, that's going to be a really good sign for Tampa Bay. And if Green Bay is able to move that line of scrimmage, and it doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be 60-yard gains, it doesn't have to be 12-yard gains, but they're getting 3-4 yards on those interior runs. I think that's going to be a really good indicator of success as well.
And just stomp on Ndamukong Suh whenever you get a chance. Obviously, that's the key to victory here this week. Andy, I can't thank you enough for the time. Always great to talk football with you. Make sure you're checking out Andy's stuff on Pack-A-Day, Packer Report, everywhere he is. That's where the Packers talk is happening. Andy, thanks so much for the time, man.
Enjoy the week, man.